This is one night only. Go crazy for touchdown! Bingo! Down goes Frazier! Do you believe in miracles? Yeah! She is gone! Soup's on.
Welcome to a special edition of the Caps, Locks, and Chair Shots podcast. This is a one-night-only special featuring just me, your host, Ed Burkeen. And today, we won't talk about wrestling, folks. This is strictly a sports-only show. Normally, I'd be joined by my co-host, Danny Bananas and Jaime. However, they are unavailable at the time of this recording, so it's going to be just me. If you'd like, you can go to the next episode now and forego all of this. A lot has happened since this show was on last. The Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Ovi finally won the cup. LeBron is in LA. The Stros brought a title home to Houston. It's harder to play defense in the NFL unless your last name is Mac or Donald. There's hope and despair in Cleveland. And for once, the Browns are on a good side. And Las Vegas, well, it's a hockey town now. However, the more they change, the more things stay the same. An owner has destroyed the Marlins, again. New York, Boston, St. Louis, and Los Angeles, well, they're still good. Baltimore, Kansas City, Cincinnati, and San Diego, they're not. Tom Brady is still playing, and may until he's 50. Golden State is still the best team in basketball. The Pens, Preds, and Caps, they'll be good. The Sens, Habs, and Canucks, not so much. Tiger's back. Serena's back. There are these guys named Shohei and Le'Veon, Odell, Alvin, Steph, Draymond, James, Sid, Eric, Urban, and it's some dude named A-Rod, the quarterback. They're all making waves in some form or fashion. There's a lot to cover, like the NFL season starting tomorrow. Happy Football Eve. The NHL season starting next month. The college football season has already begun. Baseball's stretch run is here. And so much more. So away we go. And let's start in the NFL with the Browns. The big question in Cleveland will be, how long does Hugh Jackson have a job? How long until Baker Mayfield starts? And how many wins, if any, will the Browns get this season? Everything hinges on Sunday. If Tyrod Taylor can survive what should be a decent Steeler defense and maybe even win the game, that could be enough for Hugh Jackson to keep his job for the rest of the year. However, if they go out and they get smoked, fans of Cleveland are already calling for Baker Mayfield to start. Hugh Jackson is already in the hot seat after going, 1-31 in the last two seasons? The Browns are in big trouble, as they always have been. But there's hope. A revived receiving core, a defense that looks stronger than ever, and somebody who may actually be able to play quarterback this year. I mean, after all, the last quarterback to lead the Browns to a victory is a guy that's a backup in the CFL in Johnny Manziel. What do we see? We'll find out on Sunday. There are more questions in the NFL outside of Cleveland. Like, how long does Tom Brady play? He ran off Jimmy Garoppolo. He wants to play until he's 45. I think he'll play until Bill Belichick is either fired or retired. That'll be the last we see of Tom Brady. Could it be 45? Could it be 50? Nobody knows. I don't even think Brady knows. But we will find out eventually. Speaking of quarterbacks who may be near the end of their career, we already talked about the Steelers, but their head man, Big Ben, he voiced some concerns in the offseason. And now, could we see Ben Roethlisberger in his final season? It's all going to hinge basically on Sunday. Does he stay upright? Do they beat the Browns? Because if the Steelers start faltering early in the year, especially without Le'Veon Bell, Big Ben may announce his retirement sooner than we think. Phillip Rivers is in the same situation. The AFC West is up for grabs, and any one of those four teams could do something. Rivers has been a fantasy stud throughout his entire career. In fact, he was so good, the Chargers decided to move on from somebody who will go down as one of the best statistical quarterbacks ever, in Drew Brees. He's coming up next. But is it time for Phillip Rivers to say goodbye? With the Chargers moving to LA, he said he was not happy and wanted to stay in San Diego. So maybe we have seen the end of Phillip Rivers in a lightning bolt. Only time will tell. He may even move on to another team. But if I was a betting man, I would say Phillip Rivers and the San Diego Chargers are about over with. So that gives us one more. Drew Brees. The dude has been a stud his entire career. And now, there's been talk age is going to get to him. The Saints are obviously counting down the clock. And with Alvin Kamara taking a bigger role in the offense, the Saints are not as dependent on Drew Brees. If their defense can hold up, he may not have to throw the ball 50 times every game. And maybe, just maybe, if the Saints win the division, we could see Drew Brees go out on a high note. There are more than just guys getting ready to retire. There are more questions on where guys are going to end up. Mainly, Le'Veon Bell. His holdout continues as the Steelers are counting down the minutes until they face the Cleveland Browns. With Le'Veon Bell still not in camp at the time of this recording and a franchise tag awaiting him, one has to wonder if the Steelers are finally fed up and if they're going to dole out the kind of money Bell is demanding. If not, could we see Le'Veon Bell in a different jersey? We'll see. But once again, if I was a betting man, I'd say it's pretty positive. He's gone. How about Eli Manning? Final year of his contract. Really hasn't done much in the last few years. Does he have enough credit built up from those Super Bowl victories to keep himself in New York? That's a question that only New York can answer. But Eli could follow his brother, find himself with a contender. There's several teams out there that need a bridge quarterback until another one comes up in the draft. Eli's days in New York are numbered, and with the attitudes of the players around him, Eli may not want to stay in New York. We'll find out come around February or March, or when the league year opens again with the NFL draft. I hope he stays in New York. He's as synonymous with that franchise as Phil Simms, as Lawrence Taylor. But if he does decide to go, it'll be interesting to find out who pays him how much and where he winds up. The last one is Andy Dalton. AFC North, that's another division that is pretty much wide open, with the Steelers seeming to be on the downslope, especially without Bell. The Bengals and the Ravens are the next heirs apparent until the Browns figure out how to play football. So if Andy Dalton once again falters this season, could we see a coach, a quarterback, a general manager, and half of that roster all depart? AJ Green has made Dalton look great these last couple of years, but Dalton has to win something in the playoffs to keep his job in Cincinnati. If the Bengals have success, Dalton may get a big contract. If they don't, he may find himself unemployed. The last thing I want to talk about is John Gruden. John Gruden is an offensive and defensive mastermind. He is one of the best ESPN analysts I have ever heard. And he is now back with the team that he is perhaps most known with in Oakland. However, ditching a star like Khalil Mack and sending him to the Chicago Bears, and it may be because the Bears are in one of my team's favorite divisions in the NFC North, but Gruden let go of probably the best defensive player in the league. Yes, he got draft picks back. Yes, the Raiders may have to rebuild here shortly. Yes, Carr may not be the answer under center, and they may need those draft picks to find one. However, you cannot trade away a generational talent, even if you are getting a buttload of draft picks, to anyone. The Raiders should have paid this man. I don't know if it came from Davis, or if it came from Gruden, or if both men came together to make the decision, but it was the wrong decision. That AFC West, one of the three that is probably as wide open as any, and the Raiders may be throwing in the towel before the first game begins. So now I'm going to take my time and give you my playoff teams here in each division. In the NFC North, as long as Aaron Rodgers stays healthy and Kirk Cousins stays healthy, you're going to see Green Bay and Minnesota make the playoffs. Who wins the division? It's hard to say. It may come down to the final few weeks of the season, and maybe it's just me being a Packer backer. I'm calling it Aaron Rodgers wins the NFC North. In the NFC West, it's going to come down to, and I can't believe I'm saying this because of how I feel toward this franchise, mainly their owner, the Los Angeles Rams. San Francisco may make a charge. Seattle is older, and Russell Wilson, I feel, is a little overrated. The other team in that division, Arizona, new quarterback. It's going to take some time adjusting. I don't see them doing very much. That leads us to the NFC East, where the defending Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles, are going to win that division going away. I see the Cowboys taking another step back, mainly because of who their general manager is and all the news surrounding that club. The Washington Redskins, They have a new quarterback in Alex Smith. And whether or not that offense drastically changes, we're going to find out in the first few weeks of the season. However, there's going to be some growing pains. As for the Giants are an enigma. They could be a 10-win team, or they could be a 10-loss team. It's too up in the air to say, but I believe the Eagles will win that division. The last division will be the NFC South. And in the South, the Saints are going to be good, as always. We'll find out how good the Falcons are when they take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Either of those two teams could win that division. That also leaves us with Carolina. If Cam Newton can pull that offense together, they could do something rather well. However, I'm leaning toward New Orleans. I believe they're going to be the team to beat. I believe Atlanta will also make the playoffs in that second wildcard spot, the one not taken by Green Bay or Minnesota. Let's take a look at the AFC. And in the North, it's going to come down to the Pittsburgh Steelers or the field. This North division has always been rough on the players because it's cold. And I mean really cold. Cleveland could win 4 games this year. Baltimore could win, let's say 6 or 7. Cincinnati has the potential to be a 9-win team. And the Steelers are on the outside at 10. I believe Big Ben will take his team to the playoffs with or without Le'Veon Bell. But it's so intriguing to look at that division and see Pittsburgh on the downslope, Cincinnati treading water, Cleveland on the uptick, which isn't saying much because they are as low as they could go last year, and Baltimore kind of treading water as well. I know my co-host, Dan, on the Caps, Locks, and Chair Shots podcast will argue with me tooth and nail that maybe Baltimore has the potential to win this division. I just don't see it. I'm picking Pittsburgh. Let's go to the AFC East, where we don't need to have a discussion. It'll be New England, and the only question is, how far ahead of the rest of the division do they finish? I believe they could clinch this division by week 12. It'll be that lopsided. In the AFC South, here's another division where any of the 4 teams could take this one home. I'm leaning toward maybe the Texans, but that could just be I'm a J.J. Watt fan. However, if Andrew Luck is healthy, you can't discount the once-in-a-generational talent that he is. And the Titans as well. Marcus Mariota, if he stays healthy, could do very, very well. Out of those 3 teams, it's a pick-em. And even the 4th team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the winner of that division last year, has a very realistic shot to do it. However, I don't trust Blake Bortles as far as I can throw him, and I'm not as strong as I used to be. We go to the AFC West. Who do you trust here? Do you trust Denver's quarterback that doesn't exist? Do you trust Kansas City? No. That leaves us with San Diego and Oakland. Oakland just traded away the biggest piece of their defense. Is this San Diego's year? Is this the year Phillip Rivers finally gets the Chargers over the hump? And honestly, I hope so, because I want to see more bolo ties on people. It's a lost art donning those, and I think Rivers pulls it off rather nicely. I'm picking the Chargers in the West. As far as the wildcard teams go, it could be 2 from the South. Maybe Jacksonville, maybe Indianapolis. Who knows? Maybe it could be the Browns. That's how wicked the AFC is. We're probably going to see new playoff teams this year, as we see every year. But that leads me to my final pick, and that is the Super Bowl pick. And I'm picking the obvious choice in the AFC, New England. And I got a feeling it's going to be Aaron Rodgers in the NFC. He needs to prove something. He cannot be this great quarterback with only 1 Super Bowl championship and only 2 trips to the big game. Rodgers needs to prove something. He needs to justify all those millions of dollars he just got. He's going to play with a chip on his shoulder. He's got Jimmy Graham to throw to. And I guarantee, I am making this bet right now, it'll be the Packers in New England. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the NHL. And the biggest question around the NHL, well, maybe the second, is will Vegas be that good this year? They were the talk of the NHL. I myself, on a podcast that no longer exists, picked Vegas to finish almost dead last. I did not see the job Gerard Gallant would do behind the bench. I did not think Jonathan Marchessault, David Perron, William Karlsson, Marc-Andre Fleury would do as well as they did. I definitely did not see them going to the Western Conference Finals before they got godsmacked by Nashville. I don't know where they go. I want to say they're a middle-of-the-road team, but we saw their offense last year and saw how good they were. It is entirely possible Vegas wins the West again. I don't want to believe it. I don't think they're going to do it. But the possibility is there. They are that talented. Another question, and perhaps the biggest question. Does Erik Karlsson finish the year with Ottawa? In my opinion, the Senators should have traded him a year ago at the draft. And then at the trading deadline last year to get as much back as they can. They had an opportunity at the draft this year. Yet Karlsson will still be the captain of the Ottawa Senators at the beginning of this season. Does he stay there after the deadline, where he's perhaps the least valuable? Does he finish his career with Ottawa? Does Ottawa even be in Ottawa next year? The Senators are a team in flux, and they're a team with controversy. Just look at the Mike Hoffman situation, dealing with Erik Karlsson. It's tough to say what Ottawa's going to do. They're as unpredictable as the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, who's new and has some just radical ideas. Some of them good, some of them maybe even revolutionary. But none of them are conventional. Neither is the Ottawa Senators. If Erik Karlsson does leave, it's a big mistake that Ottawa did not trade him sooner. Another question in the NHL. Is Alexander Ovechkin still hungover? We saw the month-long party that the Capitals and Ovechkin had when they finally brought home the Stanley Cup and Ovechkin finally got over the hump. He seemed to imbibe a large amount of alcohol, as I would have. In fact, I probably would have done more out of the bowl of the cup if I ever won. And given that I am 30 years old, 5'6", and cannot skate, I don't see that happening. I don't blame Ovi. He partied it up the way he should have. Is he still hungover? Probably not. He's one of the best conditioned athletes in the NHL, and one of the best players, if not the best current player. Ovechkin will be fine for the regular season, but boy was it fun to watch to see one of the greatest players of our generation act like a little kid. It brought joy back into my heart and made me believe that NHL players are more than just businessmen, that they're actual human beings. The last question I'm going to ask is one that's very near and dear to my heart. I don't know how many of you have ever listened to me talk about hockey, but I am a gigantic Blues fan. I have a Blues tattoo on my arm. They completely overhauled their roster. Longtime Blue Patrick Berglund is gone. A KHL import that the Blues waited for, Vladimir Sobotka, he's gone. We have Ryan O'Reilly. David Perron is back. Robbie Fabry should be healthy now. Granted, Jay Bouwmeester may or may not make the season. We lost Paul Stastny at the deadline last year, but there's optimism in St. Louis. Schwartz and Shen, healthy now. Can they rekindle that chemistry they had at the beginning of last season? Does Alexander Steen try to turn back the clock and get back to a 30-goal plateau? Who's the center on the second line? Patty Maroon is brought in. We have Tyler Bozak in. What's to say these guys aren't going to be in the top three in the Central? It's going to be hard with Nashville and Winnipeg. The charge that Dallas is going to make. Colorado's better. Chicago will not stand for another terrible season, and we may see Joel Quenneville, Patrick Kane, and Jonathan Toews in hot water if they start slow. St. Louis is very, very talented. They kept Colton Parayko. They kept Robert Thomas. Yes, they lost Tage Thompson. But the Blues are going to be good. Mark my words, they will get back in the playoffs. Speaking of the playoffs, I'm going to make my predictions. In the Central Division, you will have Nashville, Winnipeg, and yes, St. Louis make the playoffs. In the Pacific, it'll be Los Angeles, Anaheim, and Vegas in no particular order, being the automatic qualifiers there. The wildcard teams, they're both coming from the Central, and it's going to be Minnesota and Dallas. In the East, the 6 automatic qualifying teams, Tampa Bay, Boston, Toronto, yes, you heard me correctly, Washington, Pittsburgh, New Jersey. I believe the Devils are coming back. And then it will be Columbus and Philadelphia. Take that for what you will. The teams I left out have been left out for a reason. Due to time constraints, not going to explain them. That leaves us with the Stanley Cup champion, the series, and it will be an all-blue series. It'll be St. Louis and Toronto, at least that's what I hope. The probability of this happening, less than 5%, but that's why we're fans and that's why we watch. Let's take a look at Major League Baseball. Manny Machado is now in Los Angeles. Is he enough to push the Dodgers over the hump? No. I haven't trusted the Dodgers ever. If you look at their history, whether it's Tom Niedenfuhr giving up the go crazy folks home run to Ozzie Smith in the NL Championship Series, if If you look at the struggles Clayton Kershaw has had, once again with the Cardinals, the Dodgers got to show me something. And until they do, I'm not buying them. Machado is a great player. The Dodgers need to have playoff success for me to believe he is the reason. When or if the New York Yankees, because they will be a wild card team this year, lose in the wild card game, are we going to see Major League Baseball overhaul the playoff system? You betcha. I spoke with Dan about this earlier, being that he used to cover baseball, and he believes they will go to a 3-5-7-7 format where the wild card games will be a 3-game series. Honestly, I'm not a fan of change whatsoever, and I believe Major League Baseball, as they continue to tinker with how to make the game better, is making it worse. You want to draw more fans, and that's fine, but you're not going to do it with change. Baseball is great because it is not changed hardly ever. The thing that makes baseball great is you can look on a diamond and you can look on a field and see players who replicate the players of yesteryear. You can see Mike Trout being Ty Cobb. You can see Albert Pujols as Stan Musial. Maybe even Giancarlo Stanton as Babe Ruth. That's the great thing about baseball. It's been that way for 100 years. And the more Manfred and the competition committee or whatever the hell they're called try to fix baseball, they're wrecking the sport. It is already the 3rd sport in America, and the way hockey's going, it'll soon be the 4th, and maybe even fall behind NASCAR and golf. That leads us to the next question. The Cardinals, Oakland, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, are they all for real? St. Louis got back Adam Wainwright. Oakland will be the 2nd wildcard team. Philadelphia is making a charge in the East. And as of right now, Milwaukee is pushing Chicago for the lead in the NL Central. The Cardinals have a lot of work to do. It's going to take Matt Carpenter, Marcell Ozuna, Carlos Martinez, and a bullpen that has been haphazard to play at an elite level to make a charge in the Central or in the wild card standings. The Cardinals are on the borderline. Oakland is a sneaky good team. Nobody's watching them in that city. But I believe Oakland could and will beat the New York Yankees in the wild card game. Philadelphia, I think Philadelphia is playing above their potential. They're not for real. Milwaukee, I tend to believe it's the same thing. They just have more talent than Philadelphia. It would not shock me for Milwaukee to sneak into a wild card or even take down Chicago, who could be going through a September swoon. I mean, we all know what the Cubs stand for. So maybe, just maybe, Milwaukee sneaks in there. That'll put Chicago and St. Louis in a wild card. But before we get that far and we get ahead of ourselves, we need to predict the playoffs. So who makes the wild card in the National League? I believe we're looking at Milwaukee and St. Louis. How about in the American League? This race is already over. It's the Yankees and Oakland. So who wins those games? I'm going with the Yankees, as much as I want to go with Oakland. And I said I was going to go with Oakland. In the last 30 seconds, I've changed my mind. Simply because it brings up my next point. And then St. Louis, Milwaukee, I trust Carlos Martinez. They're going to win that game. That's going to leave us with interesting divisional matchups. And what we could see here are the 2 greatest rivalries in the sport, and maybe even in all of sports. Because with Boston having the best record in the American League, they would take on the wild card winner. And it's possible and probable Chicago will finish with the best record in the National League. At least that's where they stand in the standings right now. That'll mean that the Yankees would go to Boston for a 5-game series in the divisional round. And the Cardinals would go to Chicago for a 5-game series in the divisional round. Is there anything better than playoff games against divisional and longtime rivals? It'll be fantastic. And I, for one, am excited that that possibility happens right here. That being said, as much as I love the Cardinals, the Cubs will win that division and win that divisional series, and Boston will beat New York. The other divisional series will be Cleveland versus Houston, and whoever wins the West, let's say the Dodgers, versus Atlanta. I believe Houston will beat Cleveland, much to my dismay, and Atlanta will beat the winner out of the West, whether it's the Dodgers or Colorado or whoever. So we're looking at Atlanta, Chicago, and Houston, Boston. Boston has the talent this year to beat Houston. That being said, if you look at the pitching staff Houston has, they have at least 4 aces. That's going to be tough for Boston to overcome. Atlanta's a young team who's played way over their potential. Chicago has a pedigree for winning, at least as of late. It'll be Chicago and it'll be Houston to see who wins the World Series. Reigning and defending world champions, they're going to win the World Series. All right, let's move on to the NBA. We look at the conferences. The West is stacked. I, for one, believe that the Spurs will always be a 50-win team until otherwise. Kawhi Leonard's gone. Manu Ginobili's gone. We'll see, but Popovich is a great coach and he will make stars out of mediocre players. However, they will probably finish 4th or 5th. That gives us Houston, that team in Golden State, and the Los Angeles LeBrons. LeBron could make the Lakers into a playoff team. They could even finish as high as 4th, but they won't. LeBron is a basketball god, but even God can't save the Lakers. It's Golden State, and it's going to be Houston, and that's what's going to happen in the Western Conference Finals. And make no mistake, the Western Conference Finals will be for the NBA championship. The Celtics will be good, maybe Toronto will be alright. Milwaukee, for the sake of Jaime and Dan, because they're Bucks fans, I hope they do something. But realistically, it'll come down to Golden State and Houston, and the winner of the Western Conference Finals will be able to walk to the Larry O'Brien Trophy in maybe 5 or 6 games, but they will win it. So that's just going to wrap up everything. I'm done talking about the NBA. ESPN can take it from here. Let's talk about college football. And in the NCAA, obviously the biggest story of the year so far is Urban Meyer and the domestic violence cover-up scandal at Ohio State. How this affects Urban Meyer going forward remains to be seen. 3-game suspension is a drop in the bucket compared to what Meyer is making at Ohio State and compared to the talent Ohio State has. If Ohio State makes this stretch run at 3-0, they're going to go back to the national championship game, or at least the college football playoff. Speaking of coaches in hot water, Nick Saban, who has since apologized for his actions after his Week 1 comments, ripped into a reporter asking about his quarterback situation. Saban acted in a very unprofessional manner and has since apologized. However, somebody as experienced as Nick Saban in dealing with the media cannot make this mistake, no matter how frustrating things get. Saban will not be punished by the NCAA, but he should be. It was grossly unprofessional, especially as somebody who's supposed to be the best coach in football. Yes, he apologized. Yes, it should be over, but Saban deserves to be punished for his action. That's all I'm going to talk about college football. Season's already begun. Honestly, Week 1 is kind of a drag. We got some decent matchups, but nothing, oh my god, it's mind-blowing. Let's pick the division winners. In the SEC, it's Alabama or the field, and it's going to be Alabama. ACC, we're looking at Clemson or Virginia, and I'm going with Clemson. Big 12, West Virginia over Oklahoma. Big 10, Ohio State over Michigan. And I think if Michigan doesn't win, it'll be the last season for Harbaugh as the head man. Pac-12, wide open. Stanford maybe? I don't know. But the national championship game, it's going to be Alabama and Ohio State. Clemson's going to make the playoff. West Virginia's got an outside shot, but I'd probably say the 4th team in the playoff's going to be somebody from the SEC. Maybe Auburn, maybe LSU, maybe it's somebody else. All I know is my 2 teams, Mizzou and the Illini, they'll combine win 10 games this year. And that makes me sad. All right, let's get some stuff outside of the stuff we've already covered, such as Tiger Woods is back in the Ryder Cup for the first time since 2012. This is a good thing for golf. Even though Tiger hasn't won in forever, Tiger Woods still draws viewers to the television sets and to the courses itself. Phil Mickelson's done this, 12 straight years now? This is going to be a good thing. And that pay-per-view match between Mickelson and Woods is going to set all kinds of records, mainly because golf doesn't have any pay-per-view stuff. But still, Tiger Woods back and playing at a high level, excellent for golf. Speaking of playing at a high level, Serena Williams, she had a baby. She's probably going to win the Australian Open down there. This is fantastic. Serena is one of the few females in the last 10, 15, 20 years that everybody knows who they are. Even fans that aren't fans of tennis know who Serena Williams is, mainly because of her body, her look, and the way she performs on the tennis court. Having her back, having her win the Australian Open, having her do amazing things on the tennis court and even off the court, that's huge for tennis. As good as, Roger Federer is and Novak Djokovic, Serena Williams is the star of tennis. And I honestly don't think it's anywhere close, at least here in the U.S. Is anybody paying attention to NASCAR? I remember when I was growing up with the likes of Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon Mark Martin, all them guys, you would see stuff everywhere. And it wasn't because I lived in Southern Illinois. It wasn't because my sisters were huge NASCAR fans. You would go out to the mall and see somebody wearing those denim jackets with all the patches that the drivers used to have on their cars. You would see Jeff Gordon shirts. You would see Dale Jr. shirts. You would see Dale Earnhardt shirts. I don't see that anymore. Is NASCAR on the downslope? In the South? No. The Daytona 500 is still one of the most viewed sporting events in the history of sporting events. But NASCAR as a whole may be on the downslope, and they may need to do something about it. Could it be the new playoff format? Could it be the races are running segments now instead of just 500 laps of awesomeness? Could it be the penalties handed down? Could it be there's less fights in victory lane or fights in front of pit boxes because somebody cut somebody off at the end of the race? It's possible. Could it be that there's less crashes? Everybody loves to watch a car crash, especially when they're going 150 mile an hour. But NASCAR's on the downslope, and they need to fix this really, really soon before the ratings dwindle. Another thing me and Dan talked about before this show was recorded was an over-under, and he gave me the over-unders, and I'm going to give you the answers now. Over-under, the Browns 3.5 wins. I'm going to go over on that. I'm high on the Browns. I believe they will do well. I just hope they don't make a fool out of me for the ever straight year. Las Vegas, 99.5 points. I'm going to go with the over on that as well. Very talented team. Gerard Gallant is a very talented coach. Vegas plays in a tough Western Conference, but the easier division in the Western Conference. Vegas will have 102, 103 points, finish second in the Pacific Division behind Anaheim. They will go back to the Western Conference Finals, and they will get smacked down by St. Louis. That's what I hope. That's what I'm calling, and I'm going to be wrong. Los Angeles Lakers, 42.5 wins. I'm going to go with the under on that. As much as I like LeBron James, and as much as he is a basketball god, nobody can fix the Lakers. Sorry, Mr. Ball, I don't believe it. Khalil Mack, 7.5 sacks. I'm going to go with even. He plays in a division with weak offensive lines. Granted, his team is one of them. But Detroit doesn't have a lot up front. Green Bay is going to struggle to keep Aaron Rodgers upright. And then you got Minnesota. They're still adjusting to Kirk Cousins. Maybe Khalil Mack does better. Maybe he does worse. I don't know. But I'm saying 7.5 sacks is a decent number. Golden State Warriors, 59.5 wins. It's going to be tough for them to get to 60, but they have 5 Hall of Famers, 4 Hall of Famers, and a really, really good player. They're going to get to 60. They're going to run away with the West. They're going to run away in the playoffs. They're going to win the NBA championship, and we're all going to be calling Steph Curry, if he's not already, one of the greatest players in NBA history. Tom Brady, 33.5 touchdowns, over under. He's going to go over that because he is Tom Brady. And when Julian Edelman comes back, yeah, he's going over. All right, Washington Capitals, 7.5 playoff wins. That means if you go over, they're going to the Eastern Conference Finals. They haven't lost all that much. Ovechkin's riding a playoff success. I like TJ Oshie, what he did in the Olympics, combined with what he did with the Blues. I'm going to say they get back there, and it's going to be them in Pittsburgh in the second round, and Washington will beat Pittsburgh. Who they face in the conference final? Maybe it'll be the Rangers. Who knows? Last one, Browns, 1.5 quarterbacks starting the year. It's going to be over because Tyrod Taylor's either going to get hurt or replaced by week 6. Baker Mayfield will be the final starting quarterback for the Browns this season. Now, before we get out of here, I'm going to give you hot takes. Hot take number 1. The Browns will win the AFC North. Will it actually happen? No. The Browns won't win the AFC North. And if I'm wrong, so be it. I'm wrong. I'm just another talking head on the internet being wrong about sports. But if I'm right, expect to hear this for the next decade. That Vladimir Tarasenko of my St. Louis Blues will score 50 goals this year. It would be a huge improvement from last year, but the kid's got the talent. He's going to have the people next to him, whether it's Ryan O'Reilly, whether it's Robbie Fabry, whether it's Patty Maroon, whoever. Tarasenko will score 50, have 100 points, and win the Hart Trophy this year. LeBron James won't finish in the top 5 of MVP voting this year. He's going to have a down year. As bad as that Cleveland team was without LeBron last year, I believe the Lakers could be worse. He's going to miss Cleveland and see that all the movies he's going to star in the next couple of years won't matter a damn if you can't win. But for all of us here at the Caps, Locks, and Chair Shots podcast, this one night only special has come to an end. And as always, If you're not down with the Caps, Locks, and Chair Shots podcast, we got 2 words for ya. Keep listening.